But I have Dr. Richard C. Miller, who's going to be hanging out with me today. I want to go into some stuff, and I hope you do too, because I get excited discovering interesting, I'm going to call them mythical narratives that are too much in common with our Bible. And we got to get into this. So let me go ahead and introduce our guest. There's no reason in leaving him hanging. He's my brother. Dr. Richard C. Miller, welcome back, my friend.
Hey, Derek. Good to be here.
Hey, I always appreciate you, man. Look, you are a wonderful host. You put me and my wonderful wife over there at your house. We had a great time. We did a lot of recordings. It made some noise. It's still making noise. We found ourselves on William Lane Craig's podcast, actually.
Next up is Dr. Richard C. Miller on the Mythvision podcast. Richard Miller is a humanistic scholar of Christian origins in the ancient Hellenistic and Roman world.
I went to Biola University. I met with James Charlesworth. He said, "Where did you do your prior work?" And I told him Biola. He said, "Bio what?" He had no idea what that was. That's William Lane Craig's, academy.
Well, I think that Miller's remarks should be a real wake-up call for Christians.
Oh. Well, obviously, this person doesn't understand that there is positive historical evidence concerning the life and teachings of Jesus. But not only is there no evidence for Santa Claus, but we have very, very powerful evidence against him.
Yeah, we're making waves. I think I can't tell you how many emails I've gotten and people jumping onto my author page on Facebook and stuff. Like, I've actually made quite a few friends along the way as well.
And I know this is something you probably haven't had time to really watch some of these documentaries because they feel kind of like ancient aliens in the way that they're kind of like, I'm ripping into that same area that's getting a lot of views. So a lot of people are like, what's up with these titles? I'm sick of your titles. If my title bugs you, go look at my most professional, educated, scholarly title. Find out how many views that title gets with that thumbnail. Then go look at these documentaries, watch them, judge the content, scratch the title and the thumbnail for a second, watch them, and see how sophisticated, educated, scholarly, deep into the weeds they go, and how many views they get. And you'll see why I'm trying to get a much larger audience to pay attention to what we're doing. Because if you go look at a lot of these Christian apologist channels that have a lot of views and a lot of attention, they also some excellent editing and things like that. They're getting some big views and it's super sensational. I've been getting a lot of notifications. I am subscribed, of course, but I'm subscribed to several people, and lately I've been getting a lot by Ruslan. So before you feel like I'm just taking aimless jabs at this gentleman here, my hope is at some point to go in person and talk with him, of course, about why the evidence is not convincing and why I am not a believer anymore. But I would want to really spell this out and go in depth with him to discuss these kind of issues. And if you notice something too, I gotta show this. This is very important. Look very carefully at some of these thumbnails, right? You see the circles? They're highlighting very important pieces of information, like ancient lost city of Sodom discovered. You saw yesterday. Look at the blurred thing that he doesn't want you to see. That's there. It's a thing. No, he's very clever.
That's a slick way to make a thumbnail, because someone's scrolling down, just scrolling through YouTube, looking for some content, and they see that circle with the zoom in. They're clicking, and then that's it. He got your click. He's got the ad roll playing. He's got it. You can stay. You can leave now. But
it is smart. I'm not knocking it.
It's a good way to make a thumbnail. It's a slick way.
Very slick. But
I've done it a few times.
Let's be real, like some of this stuff is extremely sensational.
Or if demons are real, if they really are a real thing, and these occultists really can summon them. You know how terrifying that would be. Bro, this is a flat-out horror movie.
Yeah. And that rabbit hole goes way deeper. Way deeper.
Joe Rogan has been more and more outspoken about being friendly to the idea of God.
The idea that there's a powerful force of the universe, like, why wouldn't there be? Like, how else did this happen?
And the things that they talk about in this clip are spooky. Someone get the demon slayers on the phone, because this gets Really, really, really bizarre. And it leads to a very obvious conundrum when you take these thoughts down to their logical conclusion.
And so, for those who are curious what I mean by sensational, a person who presents stories in a way that is intended to provoke public interest or excitement at the expense of accuracy. Why not play a clip real quick from a Christian apologist friend of mine? I just recently was highlighted about they mentioned me, and I think you'll have some fun with it. You want to do that?
Let's do it.
Here's another one that Bart Ehrman used in the same debate with Justin Bass. He said Lucian of Samosata tells the story of Peregrinus Proteus, a philosopher who purportedly immolated himself at the Olympic Games, and witnesses claim to have seen a phoenix rising from the ashes the next day. But this account is very fuzzy and it's open to interpretation. Okay. And so I don't think this is a very good, comparison in the case where Bart Ehrman is concerned with the resurrection of Jesus, where he's saying, touch me, handle me, right? He's eating broiled fish with them. And they know him and spent 3 years with him, and he spent a period of 40 days with him, reportedly. Okay. So what about belated report?
Now, Miller, we've just been stumped.
Checkmate.
Checkmate, man. What do we do from here, brother?
Yeah, I think it's so there's only, I wish that he would have read the entire account or some larger portions of it or something like that. He left out a whole lot there. So you've got in 165, this is pretty much a historical artifact at this point. Proteus Peregrinus he's a philosopher at that time. He had, and this is an interesting fact that's not raised there, he had been previously a teacher of the Christians. And not just a teacher of the Christians, he had been one of the foremost teachers of the Christians. In fact, compared to almost a second Christ or even a second Socrates. So they were heralding this guy as a high up figure within the echelon of early Christian tradition in the 2nd century. 165. Okay, so this guy deconverts, becomes a kind of a cynic philosopher in some ways, and is giving teaching there on the road on the way to Athens near the Olympic Games in 165. Right? He had set this up as a staged event. He was going to throw himself into this big bonfire in front of the crowds. So he'd advertised this as a thing. And so people were coming to come see this crazy stunt. Well, in the ancient world, to us, it seems like a crazy stunt, and it should. To them, it was seen as an exhibition of his ascesis, of his ascetical devotion. His philosophy had achieved such great, such a great maturity that even he was not afraid even of death. And so that is basically the height of that's what Socrates, when he drinks his hemlock, that he's not afraid even to die, that his philosophy had matured to that level. And so this would have been viewed in some circles, at least in the ancient world, as an impressive kind of exhibition of his philosophical sophistication. To us, it seems crazy.
So what's going on here? Well, long story short, they find massive evidence that a huge heat blast from the sky at about 25 degrees above the horizon incinerated these twin cities on the Jordanian side of the river, just north of the Dead Sea. Yeah. And they have the artifacts to prove it.
And again, the reason it has to be from the sky?
What's that?
The reason it had to be from above
because of the angle. Like they have these human remains that apparently were standing upright behind a wall, and everything above the wall was incinerated, and they do like the angular calculations, and they can see, oh, that blast was coming like this,
People have been looking for Sodom and Gomorrah for a very long time. But when it comes to some of these places like Sodom and Gomorrah, basically you go down to the Dead Sea, and you start looking for ruins. And what do we know about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah? You look in Genesis, you look there, you start reading about in 13 where Abraham separates from Lot. You read Genesis 14, which I wrote an entire book on, this encounter with Melchizedek, which is highly problematic, right? The Melchizedek, and I titled it King of Sodom, kind of hinting at what I argue there, the Melchizedek's not the king of Shalem. He's actually the king of Sodom. And we can do that another time.
I can't wait.
Yeah. So then, Genesis 18, when he's trying to negotiate for the freedom for God to spare Sodom. Why is Abram trying to spare this city? Remember, he already went to rescue all the people of Sodom earlier back in Genesis 14. And now God's going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah in Genesis 19. But let's specifically, for your viewers, let's tick off the list of things associated with Sodom and Gomorrah, and let's look at it. By the way, if you look at a Google Earth map, satellite map, you'll notice a massive volcano, a glass, what's the remains of a volcano I guess it's southeast of Damascus. So this used to be a very volcanic area. It's a major fault line. So you can expect there to be all kinds of naturally occurring destructive forces. Now, what's going to happen if you get a major earthquake in a place like this that's really, really hot naturally? Mm-hmm. Things are going to fall down. And do you need arrowheads? Do you need an army to burn a Bronze Age or an Iron Age? No, you can just have a place that's going to fall down and burn to the ground. So that can explain very easily an earthquake fault. By the way, the fires get really hot when some places burn up, and there's only a little, that fuel can get really, really hot, and it can explain anything. Could it have been a comet from the sky? Sure. But could it also have just been an earthquake fault and things fall down and burn and get into a pit? Yeah, you can explain all of this stuff very naturally.
Okay, here he is.
All right.
Welcome.
Hey, guys.
Hey, thank you. Look, I want to say thanks for coming in and hanging out with us. I promise we're friendly. Even if
Man. Listen, Derek, this is what I will say to you. I will say that you are by far the most gracious and gentle critiquer of my content, more so than a lot of Christian channels.
Really?
So kudos to you for being reasonable and being fair. I did not watch yesterday's video, so I don't know what
it's fair. Trust me, it's fair. I'm not being derogatory at all. I am taking jabs at understanding what I think is really going on, but you would do the same back to me, and I think that's fair.
And I'm looking forward to having you on the channel at some point. We'll coordinate that. I just had Tim from the New Evangelicals on, by the way. We did a 4.5-hour stream. I don't know if you know who that is.
I've heard of it, I think.
Yeah, he's like progressive Christianity, though. He doesn't
more of the quote unquote liberal Christians, right?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so real quick. I don't have a lot of time because Zach just came. My editors are very grateful for the praise that you gave them. So just
they do good.
Okay, so first of all, I lean towards a post-millennial position. I'm not sure if you know what that is.
Yes.
Mike Jones from Inspiring Philosophy holds that position, right? So meaning that I lean this way, I don't know, but we view a lot of revelation as already happened.
Right. So you're kind of a partial preterist, correct?
Partial preterist.
That was
exactly
where I was at. That was where I was at.
Yeah, exactly. And so having said that, what happened was that topic randomly came up in one of our live streams, just like you guys are doing a live stream. Someone said, what do you think about all the trumpet prophecy? So everything after 6 minutes is me and Zach ranting about people who are into this sort of stuff, usually aren't in a good place with the local church, usually aren't anchored, usually are obsessed. It's hurting other parts of their life. So this is where we actually all agree on, is like,
so yeah, okay, I gotta say the first 6 minutes threw me off because I'm going,
so this is what we did. So we had this whole like just kind of railing into like all this sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then we come in the next day and Zach is like, dude, let's sauce this up. Like people are interested into the end time stuff, and let's lean into that with the hope that we give them that last 3 minutes of basically telling them like, hey, don't obsess over this stuff. Get into a local church, get around some healthy people. This is not the way to go. If you're actually listening there, we talk about, I'm one of the only Christian creators online that talked about getting vaccinated, for example, right? Like, because I didn't think it was the mark of the beast. So we actually roast this sort of stuff all the time. The Jonathan Kahns, that whole stuff. So I fall in a very specific camp of where I view eschatology. Though, if I'm smart, if I'm a good YouTuber, I understand that
you're making content.
People are talking about this. Let's lean into the tension, but ultimately try to drive them back to a healthy view.
Yeah,
we ultimately don't know. As Christians, we ultimately don't know. This is my position, and I've had Mike Jones on. I've had all kinds of people, post-millennial partial preterists on to talk about this sort of stuff. And I've publicly disagreed with people that sensationalize this stuff. But when it's an 8-minute video, we're intentionally absolutely trying to get as many people in, get them in the video with the hope of driving them to a more reasonable place.
Like I said at the beginning, I can't envy the model. You have, it's a brilliant model. Okay?
It's good content.
If you can't beat them, join them, right?
Let me ask you this. Is your and is you're pointing to the fall of the temple as that with the text?
Yes.
That's what I think. Because I actually think biblically, that's what's good. Because we know there's no really debate on who the 666 is, Nero.
Sure.
So we're already leveraged in that.
There is, but that's pretty much what most of the series.
Right. Some people disagree, but then you look at the 616 in the Latin, it still matches up with Nero in that language. So you're like, what's the odds of two different people matching up in the same text? Anyways, once we get there, we're like, okay, now we're already anchored in a time period. We're in the time of Nero, first century. 66 is when Nero went to war against Jerusalem. The temple falls in 7. So I think biblically it's accurate to say that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I would lean is like a lot of the post-apocalyptic stuff that we see is actually Jesus pointing people to the destruction of the temple. That's where I lean. I don't know. And another thing, I just want to correct this, Derek. It's not that I'm against people who think deep theologically. I just am not a fundamentalist. I've never been a fundamentalist. I come from the neo-evangelical stream of Protestantism. So think Billy Graham, think Greg Laurie, that world, and not the Jerry Falwell, Bob Jones, which is where Brady comes from. Brady comes from a very fundamentalist, literal 6th day of creation. The Bible is the literal word of God.
I did too.
I believe Jesus is the word of God. I believe the Bible is also the word of God, but in the sense that it's the inspired, inerrant text. I don't view it as all literal. I don't view all of it as a scientific textbook. And so this is where I get a lot of pushback as well, because I don't hold to a literal 6 days of creation, for example. So that's when I push back against Brady, it's because I often see the pattern of radical, hardcore fundamentalists who deconvert because they were fundamentalists. They didn't hold a neo-evangelical, historic, like you said, Catholics aren't obsessing over this stuff. Eastern Orthodox, Ethiopian Orthodox, they don't obsess over this sort of stuff because it's a more robust, in my opinion, a more robust view of the faith. And if you go back to seeing the Puritans and the post-millennials in that world, the Charles Spurgeon, the C.S. Lewis's, the J.R.R. Tolkien's, that's kind of the stream that I'm coming from, not this. But I am going to be shrewd and lean into some of the sensational stuff. Absolutely. Because with the hope that we get people into the... That's right. That's right.
We were just saying this at the beginning, so we're on the same page. I have to title stuff certain ways.
Absolutely. And this is bro, this is a good stream. You titled this well. You made a great thumb line. I'm not taking offense to it. I think this is, you got me here. People are sending it to me.
I got
it's genius with the it's great. So you get it. I get it, right? But I just wanted to clarify that because I think so, and that's what me and Tim just talked about. Like, hey man, the overlap of fundamentalism and neo-evangelicalism has done this, and it's very confusing, but they're very distinct. Calvary Chapel and Greg Laurie are not the same as a lot of the stuff that's hardcore Calvinist, hardcore reform fundamentalism. They're just not the same. They're very different. And even though Calvary Chapel has dropped the ball on some of this stuff as well, Chuck Smith and some of that stuff, but it's a very different stream, how it engages with culture, science, media, all these different things. So I just come from a different stream of it. Some people would criticize that aspect, but anyway, I just wanted to be clear. I didn't want to interrupt your guys' stream, but
no, this isn't. I mean, the stream literally is, we've been bringing up your videos. Yesterday I did the Sodom and Gomorrah. You can't interrupt it. You're like the guy on the thumbnail, but
thank you.
It wasn't, I didn't want it to only be focused on you because I told Neil, hey, bring any videos because there's others who do this, but I did misunderstand this whole video. I read and I watched it. Now I heard at the end some of your criticisms, and I thought, well, where does he stand? Because I didn't get the context. You did a stream, I guess, that wasn't this video on this, and that's where I missed it. But I will say, obviously, on the Sodom and Gomorrah one, I do think that one, like if we played that through, I would disagree with that one.
Yeah, I got to go back and watch it. that was a video of, so I went to Israel recently, and I went to the city of David, and I went to the old city of Jerusalem, which, by the way, my Armenian people still control a quarter of the old city. Shout out to all my Armenians. Right. And I went and I saw a lot of the archaeology and the proof of Pontius Pilate and all these sorts of things. So there's a lot of archaeology to support the biblical narrative. And then that video is me reacting to Pints with Acquaintance, right, sitting down with someone. And Pints with Acquaintance is a Catholic YouTuber. I like his stuff. People get mad at me because I'm friendly with Catholics. So that's what that video was about, and just reacting to that and pulling up a couple articles. But yeah, it's leaning into tension, creating conflict in those sorts of conversations. But from my vantage point, as someone that just was in Israel a couple months ago, I do think archaeology testifies to a lot of the stuff in the Bible. I would have to watch the rest of your video to
go watch that, because I'm dealing. The guy's an archaeologist, and I'm sure he would. Most archaeologists, I imagine, who aren't like going out of their way to try and like make this somehow prove, they would probably be in line with most of what he said. I mean, this region, geographical region, is where there's lots of sulfur already. I mean, it's a natural place where you would have fire. It's like the way I put it yesterday on the stream was, remember when New Orleans came out, everyone said it was the gays in California that caused the flooding? Well, in reality, if there's natural phenomena happening in this region, the explanation is pretty simple. And later in this stream, I mean, we won't have time with you on here, but I'm going to be showing another story that kind of shows you where I think this genre is, like what kind of genre we're dealing with Lot. And if you're flexible in that kind of thinking, then you might actually say, hey, okay, I think that this is not literal, maybe. I think these, like I said, these places are being mentioned. Look at Pontius Pilate. You were right there at the temple wall, I'm sure, right? Well, not the temple wall, but the city wall right there.
The city wall. We were there at the port city,
right?
where his palace was, or the port city. I forgot where
exactly.
Where that was.
Right there on the outside is a real nice little natural step up, and that's where he would have judged. If you take the Gospels as this is exactly what happened, then this would have been the spot where Jesus would have been judged. We're in agreement if this is what is accurately there. What I do is I say there's realisms, what we call verisimilitude, that big word of like people, places, and things are found in literature that is littered with legend or myth and may not fit. This is exactly historically what actually happened. So we might approach this completely different in terms of our conclusions, but I do think you're going to find things that match this literature geographically, but you could do that with Homer. You could do that with the Odyssey or the Iliad or Virgil's Aeneid. You can do it with literature that we know we're not reading this as literal, but there's lessons to be learned from this. So I'm not trying to be the atheist that runs around and goes, screw the Bible, or like tries to. I really do think there's some lessons we can learn from the ancients, but I also think that it's being misunderstood.
Yeah, I think there's aspects that I believe are literal. There's aspects and events that I think are literal. And then there's aspects that I think are never intended to be literal. And if you're familiar with Dr. Sean McDowell, I don't know how much of you guys saw with his stuff, but even they just recently did a stream where I highlighted that when we're reading the Gospels are having different perspectives on the same thing. And so even those parables are going to be slightly different. The parable of the talents in Matthew 25 is different than the parable of the talents in Luke, right? And so the Gospels is, I believe, accurate, and I believe reliable, and I believe trustworthy, but they're never claiming to be the literal word for word words of Jesus as much as they're documenting probably what's been passed down from oral tradition. That might be a controversial view for fundamentalists, but Dr. Sean McDowell, Frank Turek, most modern apologists would acknowledge that you're getting different people's perspective. That's why they all read different, and it's not they're not wrong because one omits a detail and the other one puts in a detail, right? And you could go and watch James White and Bart Ehrman debate on the sexual. We could go really deep down the rabbit hole, but anyway, I just wanted to call and chat with you guys. I appreciate you being gentle, and you guys genuinely are more gentle than most Christian creators that would critique me. So kudos to you.
Appreciate the compliment. I look forward to when time permits. I tried to run it by the Queen, and this year has been just hectic. So maybe we figure out a time where I can come down. We can have this kind of conversation, allow each other to kind of express ourselves and explain where we're at and why. But I think it would make a great episode of somebody who was once, and you could pick my brain and challenge me, and I hope I can go back and forth with you on that.
Yeah, let's do it. I would like that. Cool. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. I'll let you guys go.
Thanks for coming in, man.
All right, peace.
All right, bye.